How's it going, guys? Kyle here with 4MR Ranch, and today I'm pretty excited to be talking to you about the DNT Optics ThermNight. Now, this model in particular is their TNC225R. I'll get into all that later, but just know this is essentially a 4-in-1 device, and that's why I'm excited to talk about it. Because not only does it have a thermal optic, night vision optic on board, but it also has a built-in IR illuminator for that night vision optic, and it even has a built-in rangefinder. That rangefinder feeds a supplemental ballistic calculator on board, so a lot of features on this guy. And the coolest part is that whole package comes in at the time of this video for about 1,100 bucks. That's exciting because standalone optics with the same feature set and specs can be had for roughly the same price point on an individual basis. So you're getting all that in that same price point. So that's why I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. But before I get any further into that, I do want to thank the channel sponsors. Warhammer Armaments helps me substantially in the realm of night vision. You guys hopefully are familiar with how heavy I am in the night vision arena right now in terms of cranking out videos for you. Warhammer Armaments is a direct supporter of that, so shout out to them. Another huge supporter of the channel right now is actually Optics Planet. You can use discount code 4MRR. Now, that gives me no kickbacks at all, but it should save you guys at least 7%, sometimes more, depending on what promotions they're running. Again, no kickbacks to me, but when you use that code, not only are you gonna save, you're telling Optics Planet that you appreciate them supporting my channel and the content that I produce. Now, if you are so inclined to support my channel further, I do have a Patreon that I am getting more and more active with to include a monthly giveaway. So depending on when you're watching this, February 1st, I'm giving away a brand new laser for you guys. And I actually just got word that the month after, so that'll be a March drawing, I'm giving away a thermal monocular. So shout out to you guys that are supporting the channel. Check out the 4MR Ranch Patreon to take advantage of some of those benefits while also helping me build the content to be bigger and better for you. Now, the last disclosure is that DNT Optics did send this my way. They didn't pay me anything. They didn't provide ammo. They sent the optic. It's mine to keep, I'm assuming. And I'm gonna give you my unbiased thoughts and opinions, but as such, I want to be transparent that I didn't purchase this. It was sent to me several months ago now. I'm a little behind on getting this out, so apologize to DNT Optics if you're seeing this, but I wanted to really test this guy out. So like I said, this is a 4-in-1 optic. It has a 1080p digital Sony-based sensor to allow you to use it as a daytime and a nighttime digital night vision scope. It does have a 256 core thermal sensor in this as well, and it is a 12 micron and less than 25 millikelvin net D thermal sensor, so the sensor itself is keeping up with the times. They are doing a very good job in being competitive in that arena. But on top of that, it has a built-in rangefinder. It also has a built-in illuminator, and it's powered by a single 18650 battery, and it got pretty good battery life. I didn't notice this thing draining too fast at all. And 18650s are my go-to. I really appreciate them using a common and readily changeable battery. So even if you do kill it in the field, if you have an extra one in your pocket, it's gonna last you through the night, no problem at all. Since this thing does so much, we'll break this up into different categories. I'll start first with the digital night vision side of the house. If you are not familiar with the difference between analog night vision, which is the really expensive stuff that can cost the same as like a used Honda Civic, versus digital night vision, which is a lot more economic. In a nutshell, analog night vision is going to gather ambient light and it's going to amplify it to where you can see reasonably well without any additional active source of illumination. Digital night vision is essentially a digital camera that can see on the IR spectrum, and you are going to need active illumination because just like a regular camera that's on the visual light spectrum, like your iPhone or what you're watching this footage on right now, if there was no lights on me, you wouldn't see me. So you need that active source of illumination. The good news is that the ThermNight has a built-in IR illuminator. A lot of times people associate how good their optic is just based on the optic. In my opinion, yes, the sensor of digital night vision optics is important, but it's closely correlated to the actual performance of the IR illumination tool you're planning to use. So if you use a really low-end one, your experience is not going to be nearly as good as if you use a higher end illuminator. So admittedly, when I took this thing out at night for the first time, I brought some expensive aftermarket IR illuminators thinking I would need them to get the most out of this. And I'm pleased to report that I didn't notice a distinguishable difference between my think it's in the ballpark of $300, the Armorsight Watchman IR. That's a VCSEL-based illuminator that pushes over a watt of IR illumination downrange, which is a lot for those that don't know. I couldn't tell the difference at the 500-yard target I was observing. So you are good to go with the onboard illuminator. The biggest perk to that, besides you not having to buy or spend extra money, keeping the value of this that much more incredible, is you're also saving weight. So how I would run this is this would be mounted on my rig of choice, and then I can save some handguard space to a dedicated white light, since this doesn't have a white light on board, not that I would want it to. But otherwise, if you're using a different digital night vision scope, you may have to have a IR illuminator and white light on that handguard. It gets bulky, doesn't look aesthetically pleasing at times. Just a consideration there. So you're good to go with the onboard illuminator. You're on 20 power. It's a 100-yard silhouette. That is impressive. This is the stock illuminator, by the way. It's a 200-yard silhouette. It's a 300-yard silhouette. Here's the 100. See if the auto brightness, yeah, the auto brightness brings it back if it's too focused. I think I have this illuminator in very tight, so here's what I'm assuming is now flood mode. But even still, I can make out the 500-yard even with the flood. So we'll go ahead and put the illuminator on spot. And that's not bad. Now from the actual performance of the digital optic day and night, it's pretty solid. The resolution is good. It's a 1080p sensor. Once you export the video, it does get a little downscaled, as is normal with most digital optics. But I was able to see hits out to 100 yards on paper, which is all I want, so I can get a reasonably precise zero. Beyond that, obviously just manage your expectations. At 500 yards using a digital sensor that's not giving you an optical zoom, you're gonna lose resolution and clarity, but I found this to be sufficient enough for me to take plinking shots out to 500 yards, no problem, at the range that I go to. In addition to that, it's kind of paired to the digital side. This thing does have an onboard ballistics calculator. Every ballistics calculator is only going to be as good as the information that you put into it. So part of the reason why this video was a little delayed is I was trying to get a hold of one of those Garmin chronographs to see everyone using that are supposed to be pretty good and accurate. So I can get realistic or accurate ballistic data fed into this guy to then test it and give you guys some feedback. And for the most part, it's fairly accurate. I was able to land my hits. It told me where the hold was. Took me a little bit of figuring out to get it up and running. Probably user error, because there are a lot of bells and whistles on this guy. So it does have a bit of a learning curve because it's so many devices in one. But once you get the hang of it, it'll tell you where your hold is, assuming you put good information into it. Then I was pretty successful at hitting targets at those varying distances using the pretty accurate onboard rangefinder. Now the rangefinder is also important in the world of digital optics because it helps you better gauge depth perception as well. So another thing to keep in mind, another perk to having that on board as well. Now, going into the thermal side of the house, I just, again, want to manage expectations. This is a 256 core thermal optic, which is probably the bare minimum I recommend anyone going with. I know there's some 160 core thermals out there, but I think that's going to be very, very hard to get a precise zero. That being said, the 256 is more than sufficient in my experience to identify things out to about 200 yards. Going further than that, you're kind of pushing it a little bit, unless you really know how animals move and you're really looking at the movement more so than the outline. You know, that's going to fall on your level of experience. But to get the cheaper price point on this, the $1,100 range at the time of this video again, so if you're watching this 5 years from now, I don't know what these are going for, you're going to be at 256 core. They now do have a 384 and even the 640 core. Obviously those are going to be more expensive, but still incredible value for all the perks you're getting. Now, that being said, what I did personally is when I zeroed this optic, I primarily zeroed the digital side of the house, not the thermal, so I can get a fairly precise zero. And then I just co-aligned the thermal reticle to the digital reticle. So you do have to independently zero things, so keep that in mind. It's a little bit of work, but once you get it set up, it should be good to go. I just used a hot fence post that was in the distance, a fairly skinny post. I lined up the digital reticle with the digital night vision side, and then I lined up the thermal. Now, when you're behind this guy, there's a few ways you can run it. So you can make the thermal image the entire screen, you can make the digital image the entire screen, or you can do a picture-in-picture overlay. And the picture-in-picture is what I probably recommend you use, but strategically speaking, I personally preferred to run the digital night vision screen in the larger window and had the smaller condensed thermal as the overlay or the picture-in-picture window. Reason being is that 256 core sensor, even if you give it the full window, it's not going to have the most resolution because it is a 256, but if it's scrunched down into that little picture-in-picture window, you're probably not going to notice a whole bunch of difference in that small window, even if it was a 640. So I use that small window for quick scanning so I could see if there was something out in the field, and then using the onboard and capable digital night vision side of this optic, I could then use it to identify. So you basically have a pretty usable built-in thermal spotting scope on your digital night vision. You can obviously get away with using the thermal. I'm not downplaying that at all, but in my personal preference, as someone who's used to some pretty high resolution thermals, that was the most efficient way to use this optic, and that's actually what I would recommend. So overall, I don't believe I had a single freeze on this optic. Things held zero. This mount is built like a tank. There's so many screws. There's 4 to connect the optic to this little cantilever mount, and then there's 3 that you set. It is labeled with proper torque values to use, so I did follow all those, and I didn't have any issues with loss of zero and reliability in general. My only nuance to this, and take it with a grain of salt because it's really not at the fault of the optic, but since there's so many features built into this optic, there was absolutely a learning curve. There's a lot of buttons. You have to independently zero the thermal and the digital side of this optic. Obviously, it's 2 different optics. It would be cool if somehow the AI on board would just keep it co-aligned based on one or the other, but you do have to manually do that as far as I'm aware. It does have an app. The app did work for me fairly well once you get it figured out. The only other nitpick or nuance I can think of, since I edit my videos like what you're watching right now on a MacBook, sorry for those that hate Apple products, but that's what I edit on. This thing didn't really play well with directly connecting it to my MacBook, which I find a little ironic because it works just fine on the iOS-based app, and I could even download the app to my MacBook and then use it to stream and download videos. So I had to do a workaround, had to pull out an old, decade-old PC to try to download the footage to get to you guys, but other than that, there's really no other complaints. So overall, for the price point this thing comes in at, I try not to be too opinionated on the channel. My goal is to give you guys enough insights to make a decision of your own, but it's really hard to argue with the price point and how many perks you get. Would you be just getting into digital night vision or thermal hunting and you're kind of torn between the two, or you don't have a huge elaborate budget? I think this is really gonna scratch that itch and hold you over until you potentially upgrade to a higher resolution thermal or get into something fancier than this, although this thing is pretty cool with what it offers. Other than that, guys, if I left anything out that will help you learn more about this, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to help. Again, thank you to the channel sponsors, Warhammer Armaments, Optics Planet, as well as the Patreon supporters of 4MR Ranch. Could not do it without any of those entities. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. And as always, have a good one.